There we go. And then I'll just do a little introduction for the channel, and then we can get going. Okay. Hi, Uncivilized Vitality, and today's video is a long one. It's a recorded meeting with my friend Bernd Reicheneder from Germany. Bernd is a fellow Movnat master trainer from back in the day, and he's a physical movement and mind-body integration specialist. He has studied Shotokan karate most of his life. He started back in the late 90s, like I did, in martial arts. That led into his fascination with movement and eventually different types of movement like Movnat and parkour. And Bernd is currently working on, he's in the beta phase of a new ground movement specific training program. He and I are in agreement that all movement starts with the ground. Uncivilized Vitality movement number 3, make friends with the floor, make friends with the ground, the ergrund techniques. I'm going to talk today with Bernd a little bit about that. And I always slaughter his name because I don't sprechen the Deutsch very well. And you can get more information at info@neofoldacademy.com. And this is soon going to be naturalhumanmovement.com. You'll hear that in the Zoom, in the recording that follows. And maybe Rendell can do one of those fancy up here things like the buy me a coffee. So like, share, subscribe, turn on comments or turn on notifications, and leave some comments if this is the sort of content you like to see. We'd like to have visitors once in a while. We'll definitely talk with Bernd again in the future as more of his material becomes available. He did say that there was plenty of free material here to get you started. How he does a great job explaining the neurodevelopmental patterns. And anyway, I don't want to ruin it. So check that out, leave some comments, and enjoy. Welcome to Uncivilized Vitality. This is Dr. Morey, and today we're going to have a discussion with my good friend Bernd from Germany. You're still in Germany?
Right, correct.
Yes, okay. And I'm going to let Bernd introduce himself a little bit. He is a natural movement specialist and expert, and we're going to talk to him today about getting back in shape and what, like we were just talking about before the video started, like how riding bicycles used to be considered dangerous, but now now we go much farther, much faster. Go ahead and give us a little bit of introduction. And I always mess up speaking your last name, so it'd be nice if you said it.
Okay, yeah, my last name is Reicheneder.
Reicheneder.
The rich plain.
The rich plain?
The rich plains where stuff is growing like the wheat for the beer, for example.
Oh, yeah, neither is plain.
The Öde, it's something where nobody's living. There's
Ooh,
just nothing except rich botany.
oh, nice. Rich barley, okay. And you and I took, we did a lot of Movnat training back in the day, did our level 3 together. And since Movnat's not really, I'm not necessarily part of Movnat anymore, and I know that you're doing your own thing now, and you have a specialized program for floor movements. And in Uncivilized Vitality, our movement advice consists of natural movement is vital, moving on purpose, and then make friends with the floor. That's my third emphasis for natural movements. And since you're a specialist in floor movements, can you tell us a little bit about your program?
Yeah, so the program is built out of my experience as an academic sports scientist, actually, which is what I did in this conventional way, or what I studied in the conventional way, but finished it in 2006 actually, and encountered natural movement in 2011. And from that, I made my background is martial arts. I did Shotokan karate, and some stuff comes to an end some when you are not longer going to competitions or whatever, and you feel like you've experienced everything. Stuff comes to an end or becomes a bit of boring or uninteresting. And at the exact moment, I was encountering Movnat, and it has had a quite a similarity that hooked me immediately because what natural movement or Movnat was teaching was actually the precision in natural movement skills, which is the same, just on the other side, in artificial movement, like a precise fist attack or something like that. This was all very precise, but the big difference was that there is art, as the name says already, which is maybe not that more applicable nowadays in a real life situation.
Yes.
And on the other side, there is natural movement that is also not more necessary to be applicated in real life situations, because we, in our safety pronounced society, are not needed to use anything we were developing over the millions of years on survival skills. But the big difference was that arts is actually something you can do as a complete option. And I think this is also something which became clear in the arts themselves, in the inner arts it was called, that in the end it's a fight against your own. It's the fight of external things with the internal things, and bringing something like an body-mind connection that can also be covered with yoga or with any other Far Eastern movement practice. But what I hooked me in natural movement was that this is actually our biology. This is actually our evolution. This is actually the function that gave us our form. So there is not some, there's a brutal authenticity, authenticity.
Yes.
You know what I mean, the word in it. That means that we need this. Still, our organism needs stuff, even if our living environment is not affording us to use it. And that's the big difference. Some stuff is optional, and some stuff is like an obligation. And this is what hooked me on natural movement immediately. That you cannot say, I do it just because of fun. But you can say, I can do it because of fun. I can do it because it is my biology, actually, and I can do it anywhere. Yeah,
Yes.
I don't need a specific space. I don't need a specific material. I don't need a specific whatever dojo or something like this. Everything is always possible. We just lost the perspective on it because we are coined on a different kind of fitness nowadays.
Yeah, lost perspective is a good way to say that. Like we frame everything as civilization and natural human society, functional societies. Civilization being more of a trend toward wealth, influence, and power accumulation for certain small groups, and that's happened in the fitness industry. They want us all to go to specialized locations, specialized gym equipment, specialized routines, and very rarely are they healthy in the right sense. You know, the too intense, too often, too far at the extremes. Where, like you said, our biology, we're built for walking, crawling, running, jumping, swimming, climbing, but it's not as easy to get people interested in these natural movements. I tried to simplify the advice by saying just sit on the floor for an hour a day, and then of course we can go very deep into different ways to sit, positions and transitions, of which you're a specialist, but just getting people down on the floor again is difficult enough. By the way, thanks for doing this in English. Your English is great. My no sprechen Sie Deutsch. So if we did this in German, it wouldn't work. But could you speak to, I know you've developed a specialized program based on ground movements. We say Ergrund, or primary ground, in Uncivilized Vitality. Can you talk about your program a little bit?
Yeah, okay. This was your question already before, right? But I was a bit of evading.
That's okay.
Okay, so I have to start with my experience as a Movnat instructor. So my first encountering with this was actually the Movnat system, and while teaching it over the years, I made about 100 certifications within about 9 years. It became more and more obvious to me that the structure was very rough. It's a great system, but this is just a great system because it was very unique, and it was also not invented out of the blue. It was something like a bring an old system called Méthode Naturelle into a bit of a contemporary environment, which is a bit more fitness
Yes.
orientated. And this Movnat system was reasonably well structured, but it was, despite of this, very rough structured. Because if you think about what nature, how complex nature can be, then you can may break it down and say, okay, there are specific patterns. You can see there's jumping, there's climbing, there's vaulting. But as a coach and also observing the people, it was quite early clear that you cannot expect from everybody to do techniques that are maybe too far away from the physical competency. This was
Yes,
one thing.
exactly.
And the second thing was that the knowledge of the system was not sufficient enough to get into details where the people are and people need. So it's not necessary to do a mighty jump, for example. It is necessary to train the structures of the body that have been built on jumping a long time ago. And that means you don't need the whole program or whatever, but you need the stuff that you've lost and is responsible for problems that we face. And from this starting point, understanding this existing Movnat out of my sports scientific approach, and also with a lot of different influences from functional movement screen, from dynamic muscular stabilization. There's so much different systems out there that made built in my head a picture of there's so much possible out of this rough picture that is exactly covering what people nowadays need. My first thing was, and this was just coming into my mind about 5 years ago, to start to say, all the stuff like this high flying movements, which are called Movnat skill, or Movnat were called skills, is actually much too far away from most people's reality. And where the real magic is the ground movements, because when we look at 3-year-old childs, they are the movers we actually should admire, because they are bulletproof. They can fall down, they can crash, they don't hurt themselves. If they hurt themselves, they know immediately, okay, this is just a little scratch, and they go on. They experiment, they explore, they move freely out of alignment. We are always fully coined on aligned movements. Out of alignment, there's injury, and this is always this is a fundamentally wrong approach. Actually, we need the resilience and robustheit, being robust, little children, and not that fragile as we are as grown-ups. And as I started to write my thoughts, what I was just carrying, my experiences from the certifications, when I started to write them down, then there was so much revelations on concept that were just uncovering in front of my eyes, that you say, oh wow, there are relations you find there and there and there and there. And if you find something there, like this is connected to this and this is connected to this, then you can expect it somewhere else, because this is how nature works. Yeah, you find the rhythms of the sun, you find the rhythms of the moon, you find the rhythms of your breathing, you find the rhythms of tension and relaxation. There's so much fine stuff that we lose through our modern day approach on using our body, like sitting still all day long, and then reserving some time in the evenings for working out. And there's so much lost between, or there's such a big gap of physical competency or finesse in movement that is not bridged there. That means from a complete zero to 150% is more destruction than restoration.
Yes.
And And that was the magic of this getting down on the ground, that you feel that everything people are actually losing, and then starting to replace it with isolated training like mobility, strength, muscles, fascia, which now is just scientifically isolated, and then brought in a isolated fitness system to the people, is actually just the peak of an iceberg. This is the things you see. If someone looks good, he has a lot of muscle, but it has nothing to do with physical competency, because there is still mobility lacking. There's still a lot of stuff like stability. I call it stability cascade. This is a very fine regulation of a body coping with external forces. And if you're
Yes.
not training this, your body can just compensate. And this compensate means he has to bridge a lot of original functions with safety measurements or emergency solutions.
Hmm.
And, and this is bringing more problems in the end than positive results. Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is actually the magic of the ground movements, because they work on stuff we even don't know that we've lost them. We just see big symptoms here and there, and the magic is that you also don't need to know necessarily what you have lost, because if you do these movements, it will be regained uh, automatically. And also something like self-regulation and self-organization starts in the body again, because you do movement your body was built on, and which is desperately waiting for. This is
Yeah.
not that you have to do this stuff in a lot of repetitions, like normal fitness has to be done in repetitions, because your body needs a lot of emphasizing this, because normally it doesn't need it. It means you build up strength you don't need in your all day life, and this means your body is trying to get rid of it again, because it needs a lot of extra energy, and our body don't likes to waste energy. And if you do something like natural movement, or just getting down the ground and up the ground, just one repetition is a very helping thing, because there is something that is needed by your body, and you give it, and your body is accepting it, or is looking forward to it, and it is not saying, okay, you say I have to build up muscles, okay, let's do it 2 hours, and then 3 or 4 days later is starting to vanish again, because you actually don't need it. And that's the big
Yeah.
difference between things that your body needs desperately, and every repetition counts, because he's longing for it. And there's also on this conventional side that the stuff we are training isolated, and is not that recognizable by our organism as useful. And normally our body tries to get rid of it again.
That makes a lot of sense. So, for instance, excessive strength training, we do reps and set schemes in conventional training to force the body to adapt. And what you're pointing out is that's an unnecessary adaptation. We only need enough strength to do the things that we do.
Yeah,
And if you do
right.
natural movements, those strengths will build up. Um, when you and I were in Arizona, or was it New Mexico, a long
Yeah,
time ago, 2014 or so,
15.
yeah, 15. We did some rope traversing. So we had that big rope across the room, and we had to do a push pull crawl across this rope, and then a hook hang traverse under. And you did what I now have since referred to as the German turn. So you showed us this technique to get on top of it. And I've thought about that for years because, like you just pointed out, that is exactly the same pattern an infant would use to go from a supine position to a prone position.
Right.
It's the same muscles that a baby would use to turn over. And you use that human movement pattern to do a pretty advanced movement where we had to hang beneath this rope and we had to get on top of the rope. And you showed us how to do that German turn, which is what I called it. But could you speak to some other patterns that maybe you've recognized, like different ways to get up, like the tripod transition, we would call that, or a quadruped get up? Those are simple movements that even babies use. Do you have any other patterns you could share with us without giving away too much?
Yeah, we are differentiating actually on three pattern categories. I know my scholars are already don't like these terms because it's coming so often. This meso, micro, meso, and macro scales I'm
Yes.
using very lot because if you look at natural movement, there is patterns in details, like I call micro patterns, which is just the movement of a joint. That means you have in an ankle, you have a flexion, you have an extension, you have a
Like with the
pronation,
wrist.
rotation. This is a pattern in my sense. To actually, normally it's not a pattern because it's just a movement. But if you put it into relation to higher patterns, you can just say this is the first patterns we are doing. It's a very simple extension and flexion. And if you then go into the next category, it's a meso pattern. I talk about there is something like rolling. There are two different kinds of rolling: a contralateral rolling and an ipsilateral rolling. There is hinging, there is a hip hinge, there is knee hinges, and there is a tripod transition is actually a contralateral pattern. So that means when we put some joints together, they form meso patterns. That means
Okay.
that are strategies of the body to work efficiently in whole body movements. And a macro pattern would be something like we were talking about, like a real skill, like a jump or a lift or a climbing technique. These are the macro patterns, and they are all related. That means if I take this rope, a roll up, I call it, or what did you call it? German
A
roll up?
German turn. German
German
turn.
term?
Yeah.
This is actually a body rotation. So the most important thing is the rotation of the body, and in this case, it's actually a contralateral rolling pattern that
Hmm.
you can find in a climbing situation, and then you can find it in running, in the running pattern. You can find it in walking. You can find it in crawling, and you can find it in the very first movement children are doing, and this is rolling from supine to prone or prone to supine.
Hmm.
And that means that if you are using as a grown up these big patterns, they may lack a lot of very fine stuff that is actually making this movement efficient. That means less energy spending, injury prevention, and also a higher performance thing. And if you are lacking the possibility to do it, then something of these three things is missing. And these three things missing are not missing because you've eaten too little or you're waiting too much or something like this. This is because your body is not able to build up this coordination of timing and sequencing of this part needs to be tensing up first and this next. It's just trying to do something and is compensating all over the body. And this compensation means that parts of your body that may are not up to the task getting injured or overwhelmed. And this is why the system I've built is that immense, because you can break down any higher movement if it's a spare throw or if it's just going in a racing car. It depends. It can always be broken down to its basic elements. And if you want to be injury preventive or want to have a higher performance, you need to fix the little stuff that is missing. And for this, you can break down every higher movement into its elements, meso patterns, micro patterns, and work on them in a compensation-free environment. That means that your body is not overwhelmed by this movement, but it is adapted, isolated, adapted, and directly integrated into the community of your body. So compensation and problems are prevented from the very start, and then you build up this higher skill without neglecting anything. Yeah, and this is why your question is great about these patterns, because they are actually the tools to unstructure or not to destroy the structure and build a
Yeah.
structure up again.
Yeah, so deconstruct. That's actually a good way to put that. I like that. When I work with patients or clients or someone on a movement pattern, we're typically at a macro pattern level, and then I will deconstruct to the meso pattern level. We'll talk about here's where you use a hip hinge or some body weight transfer, and then when I get to the what you call the micro pattern level, I refer a lot to here's a shameless plug for our good friend Katie Bowman. Katie's got excellent advice at the macro pattern level for the different joints and things. How
Mhm.
would you, or what would you suggest? Let's say you have a new client. Do you start at the micro pattern, or would you go to maybe check out their meso patterns because those are pretty universal? Or do you start at a macro pattern level, have them try some movements, and then deconstruct? What's your method? What would you think is the best approach?
Yeah, for now the approach is a lot of out of my experience actually, which is we start with the certification stuff where I try to bring my experience into structures to teach it, and part of it is that we want to build up benchmarks actually that are perfect for a physiotherapeutic approach. That we just find the most basic positions like sitting positions where we can identify some isolated problems. And these isolated problems can then be approached on all the levels you want. That means you can, and this is also my favorite, that you always place the micro patterns you're working on. You approach them with specific emphasizes like mobility or stability or pattern. These are just three conditional factors I'm using. There are actually 18 in the end, but this is just a rough picture. And so addressing this issues or also finding out these issues and isolating them by just you can also use whatever you find in conventional fitness to improve this detail. If you have a technique like a release with a manual release something to improve mobility, that's great. But what is not what we shy away completely is that you then stop. So it means if you have established some mobility, our organism needs a reason why to keep this mobility. It's always you need to bring movement to a stage where our body is recognizing it as useful and not as counterproductive or even unsafe. And if you just work on something like mobility and then stop the training, your body will say mobility is actually an unsafety factor. I want to get rid of it. This regained mobility needs to be put into a pattern where the stability and also the pattern give your nervous system the information about, okay, now I know why this mobility is for, and now I know why I need to keep it. And this would be the approach from any aspect. It means you isolate something, you find out there is something like a hip mobility in the sitting position is not there. Then you can say, okay, let's isolate this hip mobility by a simple stretch or by a simple mobility work. And then if there's a little improvement, directly reintegrate it into the same testing position or in a regression of this testing position, because every position has a regression or progression where you can put everything that is improved into this new possibility, but not overdoing it and again provoking some compensation. And for example, it's also not that there's a lot of red lines in it. That means the approach is always the developmental milestones, which mean that in our development as children, we had stages of development from lying to standing, and
Mhm.
that means that every movement that was built on a lower level was integrated on a higher level. It's like a holarchy where always things come together and build a new function, which is actually integrating everything that was before and transcending to something with a new possibility. And the developmental milestones are giving us a very good roadmap of how we address problems. That means if you have a problem in an ankle, then you mobilize the ankle like in a supine lying where there's no load on it, and then you go into a sitting position. Then this ankle specific sitting positions work on again mobility of this ankle. They work already on stability of this ankle, and when you go into kneeling, then comes stability and patterns to this impression of the ankle. And in standing, in the end, you have the maximum stability again, which then can be translated into something like stepping under or squatting down, where the stability and the pattern and the mobility come together as one unity in a movement again. And for example, grown-up people like elderly people, 50 plus, who are not able to go to the ground or have a lot of problems already to go to the ground, you just work them from the standing down to the ground. So you don't them to the ground and say, now I show you a way to stand up. You actually take them where they are. That means they have a mobility problem and also have a stability problem. There are problems all over, and already in the standing positions where they feel maybe safe, they can hold on whatever. You're integrating slowly the vice versa direction of their original development to make their training realistic, actually.
Yeah, I've found with elderly patients, and as the north of 50 crowd myself, sometimes the therapeutic load is too much, getting right on the ground right away. I'll have my 70, 80, 90, close to 90-year-old patients. I'll have her hold the ladder and work. We've been working down to just one knee to a tall half kneeling position. And then we're getting down to a squat, and then using a reverse quadruped, sort of a get down. So we haven't even approached to getting on the floor yet to go back. And I'm working her in reverse, like that neural developmental sequence of children. They turn, they lift their head, they do the push pull, the cross crawl, and like you said, all those sequences build moving forward.
Right.
So for me, normally I have thought of what you'd call the micro pattern movements as a balance between mobility and stability. And you're saying there are 16 other components that you've identified that factor in? Yeah. That's amazing. That's a lot.
There are maybe factors that you may not describe as conditioning, but for example, it starts with breathing, actually.
Sure.
This is a conditioning factor which leads into relaxation, which leads into a better approach of flexibility and mobility of a joint. Okay. There's a pack of little stuff that can be addressed, isolated, and then integrated just under the umbrella of mobility. And the same is with stability. It's like strength is a part of stability in my thinking, because stability is something that is actually a predecessor of mobility, or nobody knows whether a body needs mobility at the first or needs stability to make mobility possible. Our nervous system is quite intelligent and quite safety seeking. Yes. And mobility always means freedom, which is the contrary to safety. So this freedom and safety relationship is a very fine communication, actually. And strength, for example, is something, if stability gets so high that muscles start not just to tense up, but also putting on another part of stabilization or contraction thing, starts then to contract muscles and brings a movement. So the more you escalate the stability issue, the more it becomes actually muscle contraction and starts to move joints together, and then movement is happening. That means strength is just a consequence of a stability cascade.
Yes.
And this is something like under the umbrella of stability. And then comes, for example, comes the patterns. There are aligned patterns, and then there are non-aligned patterns, which are very important for variability, for example, for adaptability. which are then are the mobility, the movement conditional factors. This is adaptability or flow movement, for example. Flow is the highest thing you can do in this story, because in flow there's a very fine synchronization of rhythms in our body. That means movement is a rhythm, breathing is a rhythm. Paul Chek, for example, is talking a lot about there's also a rhythm of our digestive system. And
Yeah.
if you have a lot of informations of different approaches to flow, you find out that flow is not just a soft, seemingly movement. This is a psychological state of a mind-body connection or embodiment, and there's a lot more than we think by just looking at it on a sports scientifically lens. We have a lot of rhythms, and if everything is synchronized, we are in a flow state, and this flow state can happen in a lot of different areas of life, like in a partnership or in a music. If you listen to music or if you move, it's a state of harmony in our body. And if you are reaching the state of moving harmonious, that means that your body is working like an orchestra and not just like a lot of solo instrumentalists.
Mhm.
And also the speed is your own because of your muscle composure, white muscle fibers or red muscle fibers. If you find your exact resonance frequency, something like this, then you are in a flow. And this would be the end of the conditional factors. If everything comes together, you're in a flow state.
Yeah. So a couple things to ask you. That's very interesting. We talk about the flow state, and um, see, I don't. I've never encouraged people to listen to music when they work out or in my classes or teach because I want them to pay attention to their own rhythms, just
Mhm.
as an aside. But you said a couple things there that interest me. One, I think we're in agreement that strength should come strengthen before you lengthen. So strength, stability before mobility, because it sounds like you're saying mobility is generated from stability, and that makes a lot of sense. Babies start to contract, muscles start to move, joints, and it makes sense. I've always taught to be work on the strength components and stability first before we do mobility, and then
Mhm.
you're saying that peaks with flow. That's very interesting. I'm glad we're on the same page there. And then I've often approached physical fitness or physical education with people from restoration, exploration, and then performance. And like you mentioned earlier, a lot of our background in Movnat, particularly in parkour, is a lot of heavy emphasis on performance. And with this micro, meso, macro pattern, you've got a built-in restoration and some exploration. You said something about aligned and misaligned or unaligned patterns. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah,
What you
this
mean by that? Give me an example.
this is a very interesting point, because this is also something that is also was not existent in conventional fitness. That if you think about this 1.5 year little children are on the ground, there is almost no alignment. This mobility that they are born with gives the possibility to move the joints in all different directions, and this is not for getting unstable or something like this. This is for building up the possibilities of sensory receptors that your body tell you where your body parts are actually. So it is in the first sight it looks like a complete loose situation of structures, but on the second side, it is the increasing the possibilities to feel, and this is why you were also talking about the neurodevelopment sequence, because this movement that is happening, the more sensory input you have, the more reason your brain has to grow because of the sensory inputs. This is the connection between movement and the brain development.
Mhm.
And in this phase, the sensory input also gives the possibility to give the body the competence to deal with non-aligned movements. Non-aligned movements maybe is needed to be defined a little bit. We have aligned movements on joint structures, or also soft tissue structures. There are joint structures like the knee. The knee is mostly, let's say, 80% a joint that is just flexing and extension, alone by the structure of the joint itself and by the assortment of the muscles and
Mhm.
fascia and whatever, because it has to be efficient in a very important movement, that this is walking and running. This is why the body is already in a form that is supporting life-saving or human defining movement. And this movement was built out of a chaos. And this chaos is non-alignment. This chaos was the phase where the knee was able to move in all different directions, more rotation, more side flexion, more whatever, which eventually gets into a very narrow end application. But the stuff the little children was working on, this non-alignment, needs to be transported to a grown-up, because if you are not running on a perfect ground with perfect shoes in a perfect situation, but getting into a situation where you are losing balance or getting into whatever out of alignment, you need to be able to cope with this situation. And this is just possible if you have in your repertoire the possibility to get out of alignment. That means as a child, you train about 80% of non-alignment and slowly digging into the alignment. And in a grown-up, it's the other way around. It means you mostly need the alignment, but you also need to have this plan B. And this is the non-alignment thing, which is saving you from injuries, from the unexpected situation, as well as giving you the possibility to stay variable, adapt to new situations. It makes the learning of new things possible.
I get it. Okay, so so I also, as you know, I have a background in martial arts, and a lot of times we would do things like, and in parkour we do this a lot, walk on inverted ankles or stress the wrists into what you would
Right.
call unaligned positions. I get it. And you're recommending about, as an adult, probably 20% of your time should be spent in those unusual positions for the sensory input and the progress.
Yeah, right. This 80-20 Pareto principle rule is
Yes,
also
Rita.
very nicely in a lot of details, or a lot of or also patterns in the natural ground movement thing. And it always depends, because the system itself is built on the assumption how little children develop, and they are quite the other way around, that grown-ups are. They are born with an immense possibility of mobility, and this mobility is slowly getting into stability and patterns. And we grown-ups are completely the other way around. We've lost all mobility and have too much stability and strength. And that means
Yes.
that it depends on your individuality. If you have lost a lot of mobility, you may have to work a little bit more on that. But this is where what we actually need some benchmarks. So we're working on benchmarks to find out where are you and how much you should train from this or that. And if you, for example, if you we assume there is a concept called mobility stability continuum. I think you're familiar with that. That every joint has a specific uh, um, being prone to more stability or more mobility. For example, an elbow joint is a very stable joint, so it's a
Yes.
stability prone joint. For example, the neighboring joints are very mobility prone joints, and that means if you have a problem in the elbow, the likelihood is that it's just a symptom of the problems you are facing in the wrist or in the shoulder. It
Yes,
means
absolutely.
mostly it would be not that wise to work on the elbow itself, because it is already inflamed and it's more like a victim. We have to work on the neighboring joints, and what they have lost in most cases, the highest probability is they lost mobility. And that's about a general assumption, that when a grown up starts, he should start with mobility first. And then there comes also your very interesting concept that you first start with stability before you work on mobility. And this is also very interesting because in the first sight, this would make no sense because stability looks like being counterproductive to mobility. But our nervous system works different. Without any stability, it would not grant you access to mobility because mobility is maybe a reason being not stable in us somewhere, or stability is a reason of lacking mobility. So you have to think the other way around to get on to the root of the problem. And this is the problem in a lot of therapies nowadays because they don't have time or they don't have the tools actually to get a bit deeper in these complex functions of our nervous system. They just go for the first obvious layer, and this is mostly just a symptom. The root lies behind one or two corners, and this needs a lot of understanding and also a lot of experimentation. You cannot say this is the solution for it. You need to give options and opportunities to move, and then find out how the person and the movement work together, and then maybe see where the actual problems is. And this could be anxiety. This could be a lack of coordination. It could be lack of whatever, and it's just covered with a too simple stuff. Our body is not that simple as we think.
Yeah.
Or
The
that age taught us.
What do you say? So I think a lot of people confuse mobility with just muscle length instead of So they get or lax ligaments. So they do a lot of yoga training, and they get great passive ranges of motion, but they lack the strength to pull into an active range of motion. It's very interesting. You use the elbow as an analogy. I always talk about the knee. I have patients that have knee issues all the time, and they're told by their primary or their osteopathic doctor they have a bad knee, but it's almost always the hip or the ankle. It's almost never the knee, barring direct trauma. This leads me to my next question about this. You touched on it with anxiety, how that can cause excessive contraction. What do you do for? How would you introduce someone new to ground movement with from the perspective of proper mindset? Would you focus more on an external awareness or more of an internal awareness for like a new beginner?
Yeah, it's a mixture. It's also not 100% clear. It's actually the individual. There are people who can just do things when they are externally motivated, and there are people who get anxious when they start to meditate or something like this, because they have just not controllable thoughts, and this is giving them a feedback. Oh, I cannot do it, and this is already bringing them into a blocking mindset. But I think it depends on the person, and in the end, it does not matter how you approach it, because doing the movements themselves have a lot of potential to heal a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you can start to go deeper and deeper and deeper. This is just a process of getting to know this new kind of movement. Is also a very contradiction. It's the oldest movement we own.
Yeah, right.
But from a perfect or from an ideal starting point, it is solely intrinsic work. It is fundamental to build up a relationship to your body and start to interpret your reactions or the signs of your body correctly. For you were talking about anxiety. People may move into a knee joint that had some problems, and they feel some little pressure or some little pain, and they immediately stop this and say, "Oh, when I go on, I damage something and it will become worse." And this is a wrong thinking. You should be courageous or whatever, or enough to say my body is a very robust being, and it will always tell you quite early what to do and what not to do. And if you are very conscious and slow and open-minded, you can go into problems you never expected. And this is the key, that you need to go into the problem and not shy away from it. And this is also a relation to everything in life, right? Whenever you shy away from the problem, it grows. And you should confront the problem as soon as possible. And in this ground movements, for example, you have to every position there is a regression where you can reduce the risk of evoking some damage because of very soft and controlled movement. And this factors of an active relaxation, for example, that you tell yourself to stay soft, stay relaxed, also supported by breathing, just nose breathing, just trying to exhale. This all gives you possibilities to calm your nervous system down, to maybe get rid of pain immediately within one session. Because if you show your body quite easily what is possible, it will stop to tell you, be careful. Because you showed your nervous system that it was just an illusion. It was just something your nervous system said, don't do this because I think you will damage yourself. But there's always your intellect and your consciousness. You will say, I will show that everything is all right. And then you can stop ringing the alarm bell. And this is always a conversation that is just possible if you go for an intrinsic movement. And the interesting thing is then because it's what we teach is not just the natural ground movement method, which is completely new. The Movnat method is integrated, but the Movnat method is something that is just the peak of the iceberg.
Yes.
And also something that is optional. If you say, okay, I established the function of just hopping over a little gap, like we did a leg swing jump. I have something that is even easier. It's called just a leg hop. Then you can also say, okay, this is enough. I've got my elasticity in it. I've got my safety that I'm resilient. But if I want to get young again and want to feel like a little child, I have all the possibilities open to jump over big gaps or from one building to another. That's all integrated. But the interesting thing is that the ground movement is like in a little child. It is something that is happening with what we cannot see. That the child is also working extrinsically and looking for new input and is interesting and running around. But there's a lot of stuff internally, intrinsically happening. And in the higher movements like Movnat, this intrinsic stuff is almost not more possible. You're so occupied with the technique itself, with the safety issues and the risk and danger ratio stuff, that the intrinsic approach is not more accessible. You should have build up a relationship that can be intrinsically motivated in this 75% of your fundament, and then you can rely on it. But the extrinsic motivated thing is actually then the real skill stuff where you have your safety already established, and you can go for extrinsic motivated movement that has its risks and problems, but you carry the safety and don't need the intrinsic approach anymore.
Yeah, so we're talking about the unconscious competence, like at the end of the learning cycle. Yeah. Okay, very good. So your natural ground movement program, is that still in beta testing or is that available yet?
We are in beta testing for the certification. We've got 2 certification phases. One is just called the trainer certification, and then comes a coach certification. And the basics for is we have free content and we have a basic membership, which are already good to go. It is already longer good to go, but we switched the platform from Ablefy to Circle because there is also the possibility to build up a community. But we have parts that are ready, and we have parts that are still in the beta testing phase.
Okay, so the parts that are ready, I will mention before, that you also have a book out. I have it's in German, but I have my copy. I brought that when we met up in Washington um, at the Katie Bowman Summit, and we had that. I had you sign that. But that book's available. If I can find the link to that, I'll put that in the description so people can pick up your book. A great book too. It'd be even better if I could read German. Um, but how could we put in the link the contact information for your program for people that are going to want to check out the ground stuff? How do we do that?
How we do it?
Yeah.
I give it to you. I send it to you.
Yeah, you can send it to me. Can you say it now? And then I'll when you email it to me, I'll put it in the description, but so that people can get it right away. I know they're going to be excited.
For now, we are found under the Neofold Academy. It's
Neofold Academy. Okay.
Neofold Academy, and but this is also obsolete already because we are switching to Human Movement Academy,
Okay.
and this is all right now in the making. So there's not so much official information like a web page actually, but you can find us on Instagram under Neofold Academy,
Okay.
or under the links I give you, which gives you access to the circle community and also free content and informations.
Okay, excellent. I'll get those from you in an email, and then
Yeah.
I'll attach them in the description below this video, or maybe Rendell will put them up here. I'm not sure. Um, so thanks very much, Bernd, for taking the opportunity, because I know is it late or early in Germany? It's the morning here.
It's 5 p.m. now.
Okay, so afternoon. Oh,
Late
that's not
afternoon.
too bad. That's not too bad. It's a
Yeah.
little earlier in the morning here, but that's okay. Um, so thanks for having the discussion with us, and I'd like to continue this, and hopefully, if anyone else is interested in, Barrett and I were talking about a natural ground movement or any of the, because we barely touched, like you said, the tip of the iceberg. You can leave some comments and comments below, and we'll get back to those, and then hopefully we can schedule another talk again in a few months when the natural ground movement program is really going out there, and we'll get some feedback. Other than that, I just have to sign off by saying like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. And Rendell would be upset if I didn't say check out Buy Me a Coffee. So with that, I'll officially end the recording part, and then you and I can visit a bit.